The night air was thick with silence, the kind that presses in on you, making even the faintest sound feel unnerving. Deep in the arid lands of Puerto Rico, locals whispered about a beast that prowled these forgotten places, a creature that defied logic. They called it the Chupacabra. For decades, stories of its bloodthirsty attacks on livestock had circulated. Goats, chickens, sheep, all found lifeless, their blood drained, and strange puncture wounds on their necks. Many dismissed these as old superstitions, myths to frighten children. But there were others who knew the truth. It began one evening when Rosa Sanchez, a widow in her late 50s, heard a disturbance from her small farm. Her flock of goats was making an unusual commotion, the bleating sharper, more frantic than usual. She stepped out into the warm night, the soft glow of the moon casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The air smelled of dry earth and dust. But there was something else that night, an odor she couldn't place, metallic and sickly sweet. Rosa was a woman of few fears. She had spent years living alone after her husband's death, managing the farm by herself, and had faced many a predator. Coyotes and wild dogs were no strangers to the area. But this was different. Her skin prickled as she approached the pen, her flashlight bouncing erratically as her hands shook. And then, she saw it. The creature was unlike anything she had ever seen. It crouched low to the ground, just inside the pen, with its back turned to her. Spiny ridges ran down its spine, and its leathery skin reflected the pale light in a way that made it seem almost unnatural. It was the size of a large dog, but its limbs were wrong, too long, too lean, ending in clawed digits that grasped the carcass of one of her goats. But the worst part, its eyes. As it turned its head slowly towards her, those eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural red, as if reflecting something evil from deep within. Frozen in terror, Rosa couldn't scream. Her breath caught in her throat as the creature stood, still hunched over, and let out a low, guttural hiss. Its mouth was stained with blood. She stumbled backward, dropping her flashlight, the darkness swallowing her. But the light wasn't enough to save her from the sound. That grotesque sound of slurping, the wet crunch of bone as the Chupacabra fed. She scrambled back to her home, locking the door behind her with shaking hands, her heartbeat deafening in her ears. For hours she sat by the window, unable to move, watching as the beast dragged the goat's carcass out of the pen and disappeared into the night. The next morning, the other villagers gathered at her farm. They found the remains of more goats, drained completely of blood, their lifeless bodies twisted and punctured. But Rosa wasn't the only one with a story. More farms across the region began reporting similar attacks. Goats, chickens, even dogs. None were safe. And each time those same eerie red eyes were spotted lurking in the shadows, vanishing before anyone could act. Weeks passed, and the attacks continued. Fear gripped the community as people barricaded themselves in their homes after dark, desperate to protect their families and livestock. But the Chupacabra was relentless, always finding a way in. One night, a group of locals, armed with guns and torches, decided to hunt the creature. Rosa, though terrified, joined them. They set out into the wilderness, guided by the full moon, the dry brush crackling beneath their boots. The group trekked deeper into the countryside, where the beast was rumored to have its lair. But hours passed with no sign of the creature. Just as they were about to give up, they heard it, a low, predatory growl echoing through the stillness of the night. Panic set in. The men pointed their guns in every direction, their hands trembling. But the Chupacabra was faster, smarter. It lunged from the shadows, its claws tearing through the air as it knocked one of the hunters to the ground. Chaos erupted as the group fired their weapons wildly, but the beast moved too quickly, darting between them like a shadow. It wasn't until the torchlight flickered over the creature's face that they truly saw it. A gaunt, twisted face with sharp fangs protruding from its mouth. Its eyes, glowing red in the darkness, locked onto Rosa. She fired her gun, but it was too late. The Chupacabra vanished into the night, leaving behind only the mangled body of its latest victim. The villagers never found its lair. The creature continued to haunt them, its legend growing with each attack. Rosa left the village soon after, unable to bear the weight of the horror she had witnessed. But the Chupacabra remains, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. And to this day, in the quiet corners of Puerto Rico and beyond, those who know the stories still whisper its name, wondering when it will strike again.